looking forward to working with communities throughout the Mallee. All 128,000 square kilometres of it!
We're looking forward to
educating the community!
In 2022, our staff and volunteers are looking forward to continuing to improve the lives of Victorians with a disability.
Good morning. On behalf of Victorian Bar, I wish everyone a successful 2022.
Hi everyone, we're looking forward to seeing clients face to face again this year.
Hello from Pals!
We're looking forward to supporting our community members across the stage,
especially our clients impacted by family violence and discrimination, and our trans and diverse clients in prison.
And on behalf of the LAV Young Lawyers section,
we're so excited to be joining for the Legal Laneway Breakfast in 2022.
This year we're looking forward to
meeting our clients in person more often.
Hi everyone, we're from
Dispute, Settlement Centre
of Victoria.
And we're looking so forward to mediating in 2022.
Yeah.
Network is looking forward to connecting with you in 2022.
Yay!
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Lynn Holtain. I'm the Executive Director of the Victoria Law Foundation. Greetings from Boonwurrung country, where I am today, and a very warm welcome to the Victoria Law Foundation's virtual Legal Laneway Breakfast, our 19th marking the opening of the legal year and our second one online. And like so many in our video, the last thing I thought we would be doing this year is once again presenting online, but the world is the way it is, and I know that we will share the same conviviality as always and give you some insights into what we can expect from the year ahead. And one of the great consequences of online events is the geographic reach, which is possible, and we were thrilled to have so many register from right across Victoria and to be able to bring you those splendid messages from your colleagues around the state. We've got a terrific lineup of speakers this morning, including our special guest, the incredibly compelling Craig Foster, and we also have a promise to run on time. So without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our chair, the Honourable Justice Greg Gard, AO RFD, to formally open proceedings. Justice Gard.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. It's wonderful to have so many of you join us today from right across the legal sector, and I extend a very warm welcome to you all. We are proud to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and recognise their abiding connection to this land, its waterways and community. The office of the Victoria Law Foundation is on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. It is my privilege to pay respects to their elders and to all the generations of Wurundjeri people who have nurtured this land for over 50,000 years and continue to do so today. We believe that acknowledging the past is an essential step in building a better, more equitable future. We recognise the impact of colonisation, its legacy of injustice, and the marginalisation of the Wurundjeri and other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Today, Lynn and I are joined by three special guests. Our Attorney General, Jaclyn Symes MP, Fiona McLeay, Victorian Legal Services Board CEO and Commissioner, and former Socceroo, human rights advocate, and now a new lawyer, Craig Foster. We look forward very much to hearing their thoughts on the year ahead. I also want to acknowledge some of the leaders in the legal community who are with us too. My colleague, the President of VCAT, Her Honour Justice Michelle Quigley, our Deputy State Coroner, Caitlin English, our Victorian Ombudsman, Deborah Glass, the Chair of the Victorian Legal Services Board, Fiona Bennett, and my colleague, the Chair of the Victorian Law Reform Commission, the Honourable Tony North QC. We also have the President of the Law Institute of Victoria, Tanya Wolff, and Cindy McLeay MP, the Shadow Minister for Environment and Climate Change, the Shadow Minister for Sport, and the Shadow Minister for Tourism. It's now my very great pleasure to introduce Jaclyn Symes MP, Attorney General of Victoria. As you are all aware, Jaclyn became the Attorney General in December 2020. She is also the Minister for Emergency Services and Leader of the Government in the Legislative Council. She began her career in government as an advisor to the then Deputy Premier and Attorney General, Rob Holes. In 2014, she was elected to Parliament, a member for Northern Victoria, a huge electorate that covers a large swathe of the state, from the South Australian border to past Albury, and takes in Bendigo, Macedon, and the Yangon area. Attorney, thank you very much for making time to be with us this morning. We're delighted you could make it, and we look forward to your perspective on the legal year ahead.
Thank you so much, Justice Gard, for that warm and generous introduction, and good morning, everyone. I, of course, would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the various lands in which we are meeting today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge any Aboriginal people who have joined us today. I join you from my very large electorate, as Justice has indicated. I'm speaking to you from beautiful Tangaroang country up in country Victoria. I'd also like to acknowledge everyone from the Victorian Law Foundation for once again bringing us together for this important event. Distinguished members of the profession, one and all, and particularly to the other speakers today, I'm really looking forward to hearing from them. It's fantastic that I get the opportunity to meet with you again, 12 months on. I do want to welcome the opportunity to recognise the vital role the legal profession plays in our community, and I want us to take the opportunity to tell you a bit about my plans and priorities. I want to acknowledge the significant impact that the pandemic has had across the legal profession on our courts, tribunals and services, and I genuinely want to thank you for your work in adapting and responding to the many challenges. Close collaboration across the sector has certainly ensured that critical services have been maintained, whilst also protecting the health and safety of staff and justice users. So today is apparently Groundhog Day, and it came up in my diary for some reason, and I was tinkering with the speech last night and I thought I'd find some kind of interesting pop culture reference to use. I certainly watched way too many YouTube clips featuring Ned Ryerson. Probably wasn't the best idea. It was slightly triggering because we have all experienced a sense of Groundhog Day these past couple of years. I don't think you get through a day without hearing someone to be reminded that they're on mute, for example. But we are, of course, fortunate that despite the inevitable repetition, especially those of us that are working from home, I'm pretty over this wardrobe, I can tell you, but the dedication and commitment of many has seen that the wheels of justice have continued to turn and in many instances flourish. Courts have focused on critical matters of safety, family violence, bail and remand, and did a remarkable job of moving many things online. Government and the courts are importantly focused on driving down backlogs. There is no pretending they're not there, but targeted investment and processes are helping the system to start to recover. Pending cases have decreased or stabilised across most of the jurisdictions. We have seen positive outcomes through better case management processes, getting parties talking before they go to court, providing better information and support to participants so that they can make decisions that are delivering positive results and avoiding court time. I would certainly like to acknowledge that it is all of you in the legal profession that have made this work. Your adaptability and willingness to try new approaches has been invaluable, and we'll continue to work with you to support the justice sector's recovery. There is ongoing work to ensure we understand and respond to the impact of the public health on many people in our community, particularly those who have already faced economic, cultural or social disadvantage, and the potential policy reform to continue to improve legal responses, especially in the areas of family violence, tenancy, fines and infringements, for example. Many of you work directly with the clients and that I've mentioned above. And I thank you for this important work, as well as the ongoing feedback that you give me and the government on possible reforms that would enable us to do better. There are many examples of extraordinary effort, but I do want to make mention of the community legal sector. And we saw many of them on that video, lots of familiar faces for me, and a fantastic sector to work with. You continue to again and again support the most vulnerable members of society. I've been in the role just over a year, and despite much of the time in this wardrobe, I continue to meet with people online and occasionally when you're allowed out to talk about things that are really important. And I want to spend this year continuing to promote the good work of the legal sector and tell people about what we are doing to help the lives of Victorians. And I certainly look forward to meeting more and more people this year in that regard. I want to use this opportunity to affirm my commitment to the importance of a justice response that prevents crime rather than simply punishes it after it has occurred. It is my genuine belief that Victorian communities deserve nothing less. The Victorian government continues to invest and expand our drug courts, specialist family courts, and our network of Koori courts. We do so because we continue to see them work. Tackling the factors that lead people down the path of offending can set them in an entirely new direction, the legal system operating as a checkpoint on that journey. Of course, I acknowledge our courts have to be able to meet serious and violent offenders with the full force of the law. This is and will remain a focus, but to render that authority truly meaningful, courts must also be supported and capable of seizing opportunities to turn lives around. And I know many on the virtual screen today are behind the many successes of and examples that use this approach to make an incredible difference. I want to make mention of a particularly significant recent occurrence. It comes off the back of years and years of more women than men entering the legal profession. Last year marked the first time that more women were appointed senior counsel. This is a great achievement, which the Chief Justice acknowledged and reflects the positive changes happening in the profession. The Honourable Anne Ferguson, a role model for many in the profession, gave a fantastic speech. If you missed it, I encourage you to look it up. I echo her comments encouraging the new leaders to conduct themselves in the spirit of diversity. That is diversity of all types, including people with different ability, gender, thinking, culture, and ethnic diversity. We know diverse teams make better decisions, and I extend this encouragement to the whole profession. I want to take the opportunity to touch on some reform priorities for me this year for our government. A key focus will be the development of our 10-year strategy to address sexual violence, abuse, and harm. It goes without saying there is no place for sexual violence of any kind in Victoria. I'm sure you're aware of the Victorian Law Reform Commission's report on improving justice system responses to sexual offences. Its findings are sobering and show that sexual violence is widespread, causes serious harm, and is significantly underreported, and even fewer cases are resulting in conviction. I've met with many victim survivors who have bravely become advocates. I'm in awe of their strength despite the draining and re-traumatising impacts of retelling their stories. They fight on, and they are a voice for so many who can't. Grace Tame is an amazing woman. I enjoy talking to her, learning from her, and I acknowledge the impact that she has had and no doubt will continue to have. Along with others, including Brittany Higgins, they've enlivened mainstream public conversation regarding sexual offending, and I welcome the respectful parts of that conversation. These women and women like them motivate me, but I can't help but worry how long it's going to take to achieve meaningful change. I reflect on the fact that it's now more than 20 years since I was an angry law student discussing consent laws and women's clothing and the state of their intoxication. But it was only 11 months ago that my kids joined me and hundreds of thousands of Australians marching in the streets calling for respect and an end to gendered violence. It doesn't take having a daughter for me to understand the importance of these issues, but she's 10, and I don't want her and her brother to feel as though they have to take me to the same types of marches that I've taken them to. Whilst there are many areas that require reform and attitude change, thanks to the significant work from Tony North and the VLRC team, we have a comprehensive blueprint to shape the government's plan to address how the justice system can better respond to and hopefully prevent sexual violence. I'm proud that as a first step in responding to the work of the VLRC and hearing from victim survivors, we're planning to adopt an affirmative consent model which will mean a person must confirm that they've received consent, which will importantly shift the focus, the scrutiny from the actions of the victim survivor to that of the accused. We'll also amend laws to make it explicit that stealthing is a crime. And we've delivered a funding boost to specialist sexual assault services to help respond to increasing reporting and demand. I'll continue to consider the VLRC's important recommendations in detail, including how criminal investigations and trials can be improved to minimise trauma, how the system can better respond and support victim survivors, keeping them informed, and how education and outreach can shift community attitudes about sexual offending and consent. The strategy, of course, will be informed by wide-ranging consultations with stakeholders, including victim survivors and justice and legal sector organisations. Please reach out if you want to get involved in delivering this agenda, shifting the dial, making a difference. There are many of us, particularly in the Cabinet of Victoria, who are very impatient on this issue. It goes without saying the next year will be a big one. It always is in legal land. We will continue to focus on recovery from the challenge of the pandemic and the pressure that this has put on the justice system, whilst continuing important reforms and making a difference to the lives of many in this state. Government and Victorians will rely on a strong and dedicated legal sector in 2022. I know you're up to the task, and I want to thank all of you for your hard work and wish you the very best for the year ahead, and enjoyed this morning's presentations, and thank you so much for having me once again.
So again, sorry, I think I was messing with my video, but thank you so very much, Attorney, for that perspective. A huge honour once again to have you with us. And thank you for your very strong impression of your priorities in making Victoria's justice system all that we would like it to be. I think you are speaking to a very concurrent choir in that regard. We are all pushing in the same direction. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you perhaps live again in 2023. One just a very small piece of housekeeping I should have mentioned a wee bit earlier. Keep an eye on the function, on the chat function in Zoom, and we'll put up some relevant links to materials and resources as the presentations and the morning progresses. Well, also, we are delighted that Fiona McLeay is with us again this year, Commissioner and CEO of the Victorian Legal Services Board and very fine friend to the VLF. The VLSB is, of course, responsible for registration and oversight of the practicing profession, but there are many other strings to its bow, including providing essential funding, not least to the VLF through the Public Purpose Fund. The way we work in the law has changed dramatically, and of course the VLSB has been central to so much of that, including, as you would recall, looking closely at the prevalence and response to sexual harassment in the profession. It's a red letter year for the VLSB, and it's great to have Fiona with us to reflect on the changes and the opportunities that that presents. Fiona.
Thank you, Lynn. It's a real pleasure to be here again at this event. It's one of my favourites, and yeah, disappointed that we can't be in person again this year, but I'm really pleased to be speaking to you today. I want to acknowledge the others that have spoken already, Honourable Jaclyn Symes, the Attorney General, and of course Justice Guard, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from Craig Foster shortly. I'm here on Wurundjeri Woiwurrung land in the inner east of Melbourne, and I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of this country and of country across Victoria, and pay respects to Aboriginal elders past and present, and to any Aboriginal people that might be joining us today at the breakfast. It's always great to hear from you, Attorney, and I want to echo your thanks to the profession and to the lawyers that are listening in this morning. It's been a tough couple of years. So many of you have gone above and beyond over the last year to provide quality and accessible legal advice to your clients under very difficult circumstances. And we've seen that in many, many ways at the Board and Commissioner, and it's made me very proud of the profession. So I want to thank you all from that. As you know, the theme of this year's breakfast is the positive impact that lawyers can make. And as Lynn has said, It's a red letter year for the Victorian Legal Service Board and Commissioner. It marks 25 years of legal regulation by the Board and Commissioner and its predecessors. So I thought I'd just quickly share some of the changes we've seen within the profession and the practice of law over that time, as well as things that have stayed the same. And perhaps that can be some encouragement for you as you start this new legal year. There's been significant change in demographics. The number of lawyers in Victoria has more than tripled from just over 7,500 in 1997 to over 25,500 today. And women now outnumber men, making up 53% of lawyers. In 1997, it was only 27%. Unfortunately, women are still less likely to be in senior roles than men. Last year, just 9% of women held a principal practicing certificate, compared with 17% of men. But pleasingly, we are seeing some changes more recently here. And as the attorney noted, more women than ever were appointed to the ranks of senior counsel at the bar last year, which is a very encouraging and welcome sign. The spotlight on the culture of sexual harassment within the profession is also a very important and recent change. We've seen through the Me Too movement and the many brave women who've spoken out about their experiences that a welcome and necessary reckoning has been brought about. But there's still a really long way to go. I'm continuing to focus on seeing an end to sexual harassment. I'm encouraged to see an increasing number of lawyers reporting their experiences to us. And government, courts, law schools, the Law Institute and the bar are all playing their part in this long overdue cultural shift. Some of the tools that lawyers use to practice have changed over the last 25 years. Obviously, email, mobile devices, and even, in fact, the use of computers have changed a lot over the last 25 years. More recently, COVID disruptions have rapidly increased the take-up of the use of video and online tools, both to provide advice to clients and to help clients access the courts and mediations. I think many of these new ways of working will likely stay with us. While it can create some challenges, it's also helped people who can't travel, perhaps due to disability or distance, to access services that may previously have been difficult or impossible to reach. More recently, we've also seen lawyers think about the needs of their clients in different ways. They're finding gaps in the legal market and designing new services to meet these. And they're redesigning the way that they deliver these services, taking a user-centred approach, which puts the client at the centre of how they work. The board also sees evidence of this creativity through the programs we fund through our grants program. Over the last 15 years, the board has provided more than $45 million in funding for organisations across the sector to increase access to justice, advance law reform, improve legal services, pilot innovation, and inform and educate the wider community about legal services. These projects and programs are, for the most part, developed and led by lawyers who see a problem or an issue that's adversely affecting people in our community and have an idea about how to address it. The board's grants support those lawyers and organisations to tackle these issues, which are often systemic or very difficult. The board is always delighted to support this work, and we look forward to doing that again this year. Finally, a constant over the last 25 years, and indeed for many, many decades prior to that, is the public interest and pro bono work that so many lawyers do to support access to justice and the administration of the justice system in Victoria. Sometimes this makes the news, but in the vast majority of cases, it's work that happens quietly, day in and day out. The last few years have been full of incredible challenges for Victorians, with the 2019 bushfires and then the pandemic putting a great deal of pressure on so many in the community. Through this time, Victorian lawyers have continued to provide vital pro bono and public interest legal support to the community. In 2020, just before the pandemic, I joined the Law Institute to meet with lawyers in some of the regions hardest hit by the bushfires. And I saw firsthand the positive impact of the efforts of those lawyers who volunteered their time to help people who had lost homes and businesses get back on their feet. And as the attorney noted, many lawyers have provided critical assistance to Victorians during the pandemic. This has included providing pro bono advice to vulnerable tenants who had lost work and couldn't pay rent. So many government and private lawyers who've worked tirelessly to craft and implement very complex rules and regulations that have underpinned the pandemic response. And lawyers who've advocated for those in the community without a voice, such as refugees, people experiencing homelessness and other vulnerable communities. Most lawyers, I think, do pro bono work because of their commitment to the administration of justice, to the good operation of the system. This commitment in turn springs from the fundamental ethical obligation that underpins everything that lawyers do, their obligation to the courts and the administration of justice. This is their primary obligation above all others. This hasn't changed over the last 25 years and it won't change in the years ahead either. So I wanted to leave you with that final thought as we start a new year and encourage you to recommit to this fundamental obligation and continue to play your part in the administration of justice and upholding the rule of law. Now I'm really looking forward to hearing from Craig Foster, who's both a lawyer and a strong voice in the community advocating for the rights of refugees. Thanks, Lynn and Justice Guard, for the opportunity to speak to everyone this morning.
Well, thank you so much, Fiona, for being with us once again. It's always a delight to have you, and I think you've nailed the key issues that we've looked at and experienced over the last few years. And I suppose when we were thinking about the theme for this morning, it was a determination to pick an optimistic one, to look forward, and hence our opening video. What were all those various different organisations looking forward to? And as you say, after all the trials we've had, it's an opportunity to consider what we want the legal profession and our society as a whole to look like in a post-pandemic world. It's a real opportunity. And Craig Foster, AM, our very special guest this morning, embodies that very positive commitment to making a difference, which, as Fiona reminds us, is absolutely inherent in the work of lawyers. But I thought I would put some numbers to the pro bono effort that Fiona was describing over both the fires and the 2 years plus now of the pandemic. The legal profession has really stood up in exceptional ways, and that has amounted to a huge contribution. For example, in 2021, Victorian lawyers even gave almost 205,000 hours of pro bono legal assistance, and that amounts to about $80 million worth. And the Vic Bar pro bono scheme, which is administered by Justice Connect, had a 20% increase in the number of people going on to receive assistance from a Victorian barrister in 2021. So recognising our expertise, our capacities, and the difference that they can make to people in distress is something that Craig Foster is very familiar with. Former Socceroo human rights activist and recent law graduate, Craig, as you know, works tirelessly to tackle the big issues of our time: Indigenous rights, refugee advocacy, homelessness, domestic violence, and the climate crisis. And I'm sure there are several others, not to mention a small interest in football on the side. So as we set sail on 2022, we invited Craig to offer some thoughts on the enormous value in giving back and in recognising the skills and the strengths we all have to offer and how we can apply them to make a real difference. Craig, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you, Lynn, for those kind comments. It's been a very late night. I wish that I could report some more positive news on the Socceroos and even the Matildas in recent days. But nevertheless, we'll see how they go in terms of trying to qualify for Qatar. I want to thank the Victoria Law Foundation for the invitation to speak with you all, and to your esteemed speakers. I've been really encouraged by this morning's focus so far on women's rights, gender equality and representation, sexual harassment, and am pleased to see that as a profession and foundation, you are collectively giving what the brilliant, strong and transformative young Australian Grace Tame might call a side eye to gender discrimination. 2021 was so difficult in many ways, but brought incredible hope, and I would say cultural progress, through the strength of so many extraordinary Australian women, Grace foremost. How magnificent it was to see a principled young woman demonstrate such extraordinary authenticity and truth-telling in the face of power. I hope that you're all inspired by Grace. I certainly am. And bringing our full selves to work and making choices every day that refuse to do harm are the subject of my brief comments this morning. I'm joining you from the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation in New South Wales, otherwise known as Wiradjuri. Acknowledge that this land was never ceded, pay respects to elders past and present, and consider the Uluru Statement the manifestation of Indigenous Australia's right to self-determination under the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. I hope you all support it individually and institutionally. In the short time we have together, I'm going to remind you this morning of the awesome power in your hands, appeal to you to use your terribly powerful skills to lift people up, protect them, and ensure as far as possible that harm comes to no one, and challenge you to interrogate your own work and that of the entire profession. And I'll provide a few important examples for you. My own legal education was nothing less than arduous. It took several attempts over many decades, from 19 to 50 years of age, punctuated by a professional sport and broadcasting career. The application of logic and legal reasoning, the understanding of precedent and legal historical development was so powerful, however, because it showed me the foundational power that lawyers have to shape all aspects of society, the criticality of the rule of law, and that law is entirely neutral. It is the practitioners, the writers and defenders of laws who are not neutral. Laws can be written and applied for better and worse. Environmental law, transnational taxation and tax havens, laws that discriminate, that incarcerate kids as young as 10, that enable constraints and hoods on Indigenous kids, that stole a generation, that created robo-debt, are all written by someone. The world is scampering to redress climate action and the belching of emissions, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, deforestation, all of which are enabled by laws. Someone had to write the laws for indefinite detention of innocent refugees. I'd imagine, while justifying to themselves how they were just doing their job. But your job changes lives for the better and worse, and we're all accountable for the actions we take and the consequences we create. I'd like to encourage you to give more thought and take responsibility for the laws that you write or defend, and contend that conscience must play a part in all our professional lives. We're people first, professional actors second. And this is too often forgotten by us all. That you place a strong sense of human equality, compassion, and solidarity with others at the center of all your work. That we all do, in fact. If it hurts someone, some family, some community or minority, and offends our good conscience, shouldn't we refrain? Equally, of course, we now have marriage equality, women's reproductive rights, anti-discrimination, climate justice cases all around the world, which is fabulous, assisted dying laws, progress on treaty with you in Victoria, and many other wonderful examples of positive change. At a time in history when every sector of society is being scrutinised for the social impact it creates, whether on people or the planet, I know there are many of you who are interrogating your own profession, your own employers, your own work, to ensure that it sits comfortably within your sense of self. Sports people in my field are considering their human rights impact and whether we should any longer look away from the abuse of Uyghurs in China as the Olympics go on, or migrant workers in Qatar as the Socceroos struggle to qualify. Fossil fuel companies are contemplating whether they can carry on separating their personal views and human conscience from their professional work. And a new generation of Australians are bringing their full selves, including their compassion, to their daily work environment, refusing to separate who they are from what they do. Do no harm is as good a principle as any to underpin the amazing work that you do and extraordinary power that you possess. Martin Luther King talked about the moral imperative to disobey unjust laws in correspondence to fellow clergymen in 1963. I submit that an individual who breaks a law that conscience tells him is unjust and willingly accepts the penalty by staying in jail to arouse the conscience of the community over its injustice is in reality expressing the very highest respect for the law, he said. Can I suggest that the same might apply to your work and to all our lives, that by refusing to write, apply, or perhaps even sometimes obey laws that offend a basic sense of human decency and solidarity, that patently hurt, demonize, or marginalize others, contribute to carbon emissions, global warming, or damage the planet, you are, or we are, in reality, expressing the very highest respect for the law? I'll, of course, not lecture you on legal philosophy. You're all at the interface between theory and practice, but I would like you to know from personal experience how important your work is. From the mouths of my loved refugee friends like Kurdish artists, poets and singers, Mostafa Azimitabad and Farhad Bandesh, who each lost 8 years of their young lives to Australia's offshore prison regime. They lost their mental and physical health, their connection to family, friends that perished, and that there is a very real human cost, a very real human cost to many of Australia's present laws. As many of you will know, these days I spend much time advocating for a variety of social causes, including the rights of refugees and asylum seekers, and against the deadly policy that's cost innocent lives, whether extinguished or broken from both inside and out. There are, of course, still 33 men from Manus Island locked interminably in the Park Hotel in Carlton, so very near you all, in their 9th year of detention, all of whom could do with your advocacy and your brilliant skill. Any law that tortures innocent people, or at a minimum constitutes cruel, degrading and inhuman treatment, and 9 years detention certainly qualifies for that definition, as judged by the International Criminal Court, which you all know, is an offence to human conscience, and yet it is written and enforced by humans against all good conscience. I was just doing my job is not going to wash with future generations facing rising seas and temperatures, wild weather, and mass human displacement. Our primary job as people surely is to put the well-being of all first, not to do harm, and to make a positive contribution in everything we do, not only to wash our guilt away with foundations, donations, and endowments. COVID at least taught us that for all the edifice and infrastructure of society, all the institutions and hierarchies, we need each other, you and I, if only to strengthen the social chain between us that, if broken, directly affects us all. That our actions have consequences which are often unintended, even unseen, and that our responsibility as social actors, not individual glory hunters, is to do as much good and as little harm as humanly possible. And this often takes courageous decisions about how and where we expend our capabilities. My last few years has seen great personal and professional change brought on largely by a determination to free innocent people whose only crime was to flee persecution at a time in Australian political history when their value as political pawns is at an all-time high. There is a professional cost, but the alternative cost to one's sense of human solidarity and what we might call a soul is far, far greater. I've resolved to finish my working life and my life with a sense that I did what I possibly could for those in need at whatever cost is necessary. Of course, the privilege afforded me by sport obligates me to expend my social capital for others, gives me the opportunity to do so. And I'll hope you will feel the same way. Many of you have immense professional and social capital that, if used to encourage improvement in Australia's treatment of Indigenous kids, refugees, the impoverished, can make huge positive impact. You and we all just have to value the impact on people more than on our career. I know that's difficult to say, it's difficult to contemplate, and it's more difficult even to bring to life. But I assure you, to the extent that we can, it's much, much more fulfilling. The refugees' lives are measured in votes, not breaths, and I've committed to do whatever I can, not only to free them, but to encourage us all to see others as equals, to look past colour and gender, religion and ethnicity, to acknowledge the basic rule of life that if we mistreat and torture innocent people, it's us that are the victims, as we lose our very sense of compassion, dare I say it, empathy, and just basic humanity. Each time, every time we treat someone else as less than human, And in the case of refugees, nothing more than animals, frankly. We lose a piece of our inner self and collectively, I would say, our national soul. Step by step, policy by policy, amendment by amendment, we descend until nothing becomes impossible. Not locking up an innocent family from Biloela, who have the right to legal appeal. Not forcing incredible self-harm from people who threw themselves on our mercy, not deaths, not self-immolations, not locking out Indian Australians. Nothing becomes impossible. But so too can we lift up our higher selves, the better sense of our national identity, by committing to do better, not to demonize people. For us, all of us on this call, to speak and act out against human rights abuse, however difficult that is, and against the intent to implement laws that dehumanize people. And in that critically important pursuit, you all hold the greatest power in your professional capacity, collective solidarity, and your willingness to uphold standards that politicians will too often obliterate. Law is neutral, but laws are not neutral. They are written, prosecuted, defended for better and worse. And as we contemplate our personal contributions in 2022, please keep in mind the foundational importance of human dignity, basic standards of treatment for all, and that a country, us, is defined not by its greatest achievements, but by who it leaves behind, doesn't care about, disregards, demonizes, and attacks. That's the measure of us. Australia must be better in very many respects, all of which are touched by, if not predicated on, the law. And you make a difference every single day in your profession, for better and worse. The most noble of professions, or one that is dangerous to the vulnerable, voiceless, and marginalized. It's up to you. Please bring your conscience and your sense of shared humanity to work every day. Thank you.
I don't quite know what to what to say in summary of that, Craig, but all I can do is thank you ever so much for a very clear-eyed perspective on our personal and our professional power and the tasks before us and our responsibility as both citizens, humans, and also people who work across the legal sector. That was enormously compelling, and I think will resonate with all our listeners and viewers across the state and for very, very many months to come. You've set us up exceptionally well to consider deeply our responsibilities in 22 and beyond. So thank you ever so much for joining us.
My pleasure, thank you.
Let me just quickly, before we draw proceedings to a close, give you a sense of what the Foundation is up to at the moment, because I think you'd be surprised at the diversity of our activity, and I cannot express sufficiently my deep satisfaction and pride in what we've managed to do over the last 12 months or so, or even 24 at the Foundation. We literally have not missed a beat in delivering on research, education, and grant making. There is a very large piece of work which is about to go into the field, the Public Understanding of Law Survey, and there will be 6,000 interviews conducted across Victoria. So if an interviewer comes to your house, please take the time to respond. We'll be eternally grateful. But when that data set comes back, we will have 6,000 detailed responses and critical insights into legal need in Victoria and how Victorians understand and interact with our legal system. This is world first research and will set Victoria up with an evidence base on legal need and understanding, which can underpin practice and policy and government decision-making for years to come. We're also in the research area staging an international access to justice online conference on really pressing issues around civil law, which happens at the end of March, beginning of April. This is in conjunction with the University of California, Irvine, sorry, as they say in the States. We've got sessions on all sorts of topics like the deregulation of the profession, the impact of COVID on courts, both here and around the world, and climate change and legal need, which is a growing area, as you can imagine, of interest and focus. Have a look at the website, check out the program, and please sign up if there's a session that intrigues you. We have awarded our third round of knowledge grants, which are very substantial grants supporting some really fascinating work across the sector, like looking at aspects of COVID regulation, how to make legal procedures more effective for people experiencing family violence, as well as some systems improvement for people using legal assistance services, which is much, much needed. Our community grants are open now, so please, if you're interested in applying, have a look at the website. They close on the 7th of March, and you can have a conversation with our grants manager, Melanie Reibel, who's delighted to talk to you about your ideas for a community grant. And lastly, I'd like to mention the thousands of school students that we have contact with across the state and through the years, and how indebted we are to the members of our profession, and some of them exceptionally highly regarded and qualified, who give so generously of their time to talk to young people about the law and their experience of it, and to encourage them in thinking about the diverse prospects of a future in the legal profession. Well, as you know, we did some pretty fancy footwork in 2021 to make sure that the programs proceeded, and we will try and take the good bits of our online experience together with some hybrid in-person opportunities and deliver on all our activities as best we can in 2022, which of course brings me to Law Week, which is fast approaching. We look forward to hopefully both a combination of in-person and online events for Law Week this year. It's the 16th to the 22nd of May. It'll be here before you know it. So please get in touch if you'd like to discuss any ideas. We would love to talk to you further about the sorts of things that you think the community could really benefit from, and the sort of expertise that you can offer them through Law Week activities. If you've been to our Legal Laneway breakfasts in the past, you'll know that we usually have a raffle to raise money for a charity that works in and around the justice system. But as you're probably also aware, online raffles can be pretty tricky. So this year we have once again asked for your assistance by way of donations instead. And we are supporting Kinfolk, which is an exceptionally important agency running a food relief program, providing hundreds of meals a week to Victorians facing food insecurity as a result of family violence, homelessness, income loss, and diversity of other circumstances which prevail. They work with organisations like In Touch and McLeay Community Services, Launch Housing, Yarra Libraries, Clo Health, and the City of Melbourne, and lots of community centres across the state. And their operations are made possible through ongoing community support. So I urge you all to make a donation of whatever amount you can. The link is in the chat function, and please take a moment to make some small donation. In closing, can I just offer my thanks once again to our participants, the Honourable Justice Greg Gard, our Chair, Attorney General Jaclyn Symes, MP, Craig Foster, activist and incredibly articulate commentator on the human condition, as we heard this morning, Fiona McLeay, CEO and Commissioner of the VLSB and C, and also to our very fine Auslan interpreters, Brooke and Jerry, without whom we would be a lot less accessible. And my very sincere thanks to Helen and Matt and Jackie and Lisa in our events and comms teams who have made this morning happen, and to the great organisations who submitted their lovely video messages. If you missed them at the top, we'll replay them in a few seconds. And also to the Cafes of Hardware Lane for their vouchers. We will be back in person, and I hope that's 23. But I do hope that you've enjoyed our online Legal Laneway breakfast, and you can take some thoughts and some resonance away from this morning's conversations, and that next year we get to convene over coffee and muffins in the Laneway. Have a very fine day. Thank you again for coming, and go well in 2022. Thanks.
looking forward to working with communities throughout the Mallee. All 128,000 square kilometres of it!
We're looking forward to
educating the community.
In 2022, our staff and volunteers are looking forward to continuing to improve the lives of Victorians with a disability.
Good morning. On behalf of Victorian Bar, I wish everyone a successful 2022.
Hi everyone, we're looking forward to seeing clients face to face again this year.
Hello from Pals.
We're looking forward to supporting our community members across the stage,
especially our clients impacted by family violence and discrimination, and our trans and diverse clients in prison.
And on behalf of the LAV Young Lawyers section,
We're so excited to be joining for the legal Laneway breakfast in 2022.
This year we're looking forward to
Meeting our clients in person more often.
Hi everyone, we're from
Dispute, Settlement, Centre
of Victoria.
and we're looking so forward to mediating in 2022.
Yeah. Network is looking forward to connecting with you in 2022.
Yay!